What is the worst NSFW thing you did in your teens? Me and a friend jerked each other off in exchange for seeing a girl naked during a game of truth or dare. I regret nothing. Hopefully this gets buried at the bottom. Last semester of high school my friends and I were goofing around ready to graduate and off to uni, not a care in the world. I excused myself to use the restroom and my best mate dared me to go into a stall and to try and pee over into the next stall's toilet. Basically, point my gun upwards and pee into the adjacent stall. Since it was only a few days till we left the school for good, I decided duck it, why not? Unfortunately, when I went into my stall I forgot to check and see if anyone was in the stall beside me, and of course, my D friends didn't remind me, so I pointed upwards about 65 to 70-degree angle, and let her rip. Next thing I know, I hear a kid screaming at the sudden Niagara Falls of piss coming down on him and he, and this is according to my friends, ducking bolts out of the stall, pants around ankles, pee dripping all over. Thankfully I never saw his face, nor did he see mine. Was about to have a six for the first time. Girl's mum walked in just before while we were completely naked, scared me really ducking bad. Few months later trying again to have my first time but are now super paranoid. She was blowing me in her basement and the water heater turned on. Scared me so bad I went soft in her mouth. I got a hand job in the back seat of a car during the day, me sitting directly behind the driver, with nothing covering my D, with the girl's mum driving. My best friend was a peeping Tom. He told me about our very hot neighborhood girl who was a high school cheerleader and that she undresses without pulling her shades. I didn't believe him, so he challenged me to come with him one day. He climbed about 3-4 up on a 50-foot tree in the back of her house and waited. Sure enough, the lights come on and there she is in her magnificent nakedness. I fapped for months after that day. I still feel guilty about it decades later. Skipped class to have a drink, pocket flask were in as a joke, drinking age 16 here, and the key obsession with my GF at the time. Everybody in class, so empty halls, right? My teacher came out to grab something in the office and saw me with my hands under the GF shirt and that stupid silver flask. Teacher only rolled eyes and said, living the good life. When I was 17, at the farm I worked at, I drove a John Deere tractor straight down a steep hill at full speed. I'm lucky to be walking right now. That was very NSFW. Foursome, 2 guys 2 girls, when I was 15. Totally unexpected. And girl action too. Next day I went to church and thanked God. And I'm not even religious. I just wanted to say thanks to the higher power that put me on this earth. I was 17 and at the time I was working at a store in the mall. A friend of mine asked me for a ride to the mall and I semi-jokingly said, sure, but only if I can get some head, or something along those lines. To my surprise she said yes. I picked her up and we arrived at the mall and I'm still expecting her to back out at this point. She then tells me to get in the back seat and she goes to work on me. This is mid-afternoon in a busy mall parking lot, by the way. The act itself wasn't amazing, but I still managed to finish. The thing is, she pulled her mouth off right away and I shot my load all over my work clothes. Bear in mind that my work uniform was all black. Not a fun day at work after that. In a single night, we may have taken some hard drugs, wrote a girl's entire next album and had a threesome while listening to a Simon and Garfunkel album, nothing extreme. I ducked a chicken pot pie. Rubbed one out in a public pool when no one was around at night. I didn't realize there were cameras till after I finished. Never heard from the building manager and I still live there. It happened when I was 18 years old. My smoking hot step-aunt is only a few years older than I am. She was like 22 or 23 when I was 18. She was a party animal and I was one too. We would often go drink with her friends and my friends together, hit the club every weekend, sometimes twice a week, get ducking hammered every time. I knew she was the typical wild girl. She got drunk a few times in the club and we often make out with each other. I know it's ducking weird. I used to stay at her place when we go clubbing cause I don't wanna bother my parents like at 5 a.m. in the morning, plus that they didn't know I went clubbing. All I said I was sleeping over at her house to play games with her brother. Okay, so one day we got back pretty early around 3 a.m. Both us were a little tipsy but were totally fine. I entered her bathroom in her room, accidentally leaving the door unlocked, and proceeded to jack off. She suddenly walked in, and I was shocked. Then out of the blue, they grabbed my hand, pulled me and gave me a kiss. After a good makeout session we had sex. I was 16 and had sex with a 45-year-old woman. She was the kinkiest and best I've had to date. This includes my wife, sadly. Me and my ex were walking down by the docks of boats in a state park on Long Island. We were both in high school, aka young and horny, so we hopped onto a random stranger's boat and started fooling around. Ended up with her riding me while I was sitting in the captain's chair. Bent her over while she was grabbing the steering wheel. Went on for a bit, then decided to come across the control panel. straightened ourselves up and continued on our lovely afternoon stroll. Ducked a chick while two of our friends, a couple, were in the bed watching a movie with us. They didn't care. They then later had sex with me in the room a couple weeks later when I was hanging out at the guy's place and she stopped around. Pretty tame I guess, but oh well. I masturbated on camera to strangers on the internet. GF gave me a BJ with my parents in the front seat. We put a coat over her head, she was napping. Friend and I peeped on his girlfriend because his friends didn't believe they were dating. Not sure how peeping proved anything, but it worked. At 16 had sex with the preacher's son at the center of the Christian college. I didn't even know him very well, or go to church as much as he did. We just snuck out of our own houses and he took me there. It was awesome. Wore sneakers instead of approved no-slip safety shoes in a slippery work environment. When I found out my girlfriend cheated on me when I was 17, I was devastated. Went to University of Illinois with some friends to party and get my mind off of her. Met her best friend there who heard about what had happened, and after a couple bars and a lot of drinks, I ended up having sex with her and her Asian roommate. Safe to say, I felt a lot better after that weekend. Daily sex in the school chapel, or hand jobs, blow jobs in the library. First hand job in the back of a church van filled with boys. This is when I discovered I was gay. My neighbor was a huge itch to my mum. So a couple of friends and I broke into her house, upper-decked her toilet, and poured laxatives in their apple cider. We filmed it, then destroyed the film when we got older. Masturbated while riding a bike down a country lane. Full daylight, had to be careful of the occasional car. Lost my virginity when I was 13 to a 16-year-old in Monte Carlo. I still don't know if I regret it or not. Bro, this thread made me realize I am boring. I didn't finish the assignments on time. Yeah. I'm still in my teens. You guys have given me a lot to live up to. Well, nobody else did, so now I have to be that guy. I'm sorry, there is a 12-year-old in me that just can't resist, and I have never got to post this before. So here goes. Oops, mum. Ducked a married woman at age 16 while her child was next door. Lost my dignity to a girl in her relationship in her best friend's bed. The best friend had liked me for quite some time. Then later had sex with the best friend in the same bed, and all I could think was, this looks familiar. Ran off with some strangers during bike week when I was 17. Did a ton of drugs, drank gallons of booze, and ended up sleeping with two of the strangers in a flea motel. Time of my life. Stuck a troll's head up my ass. The ducking audacity of my younger self is making me uncomfortable. When I was 14 to 16, my first girlfriend and I would have a sex in the back seat of her mum's van while she was driving. She would sit on my lap and just pull down her pants. Other times when we had a blanket, I'd finger her while she was laying on me in the back. One time, we were caught in her room and she strategically got up after her mum stormed up, giving me time to get dressed. They could only see us under the blankets. Gosh, we were ridiculous. Parks, empty houses, at the foot of my parents' bed when they were sleeping. That's where we had to stay when she spent the night. It gave me a lot of experience, but I still feel stupid for it all. My eventual children have no ducking chance of getting away with anything I've done. About 19 at the time, GF is giving me a BJ. Her mum walks down the hall to see her daughter with a mouth full of fic, turns and walks back. Never says a word. Next day, GF said her mum kept looking like she wanted to say something to her but never did. One of my closest friends and I got simultaneous handjobs and sequential BJs, yay sloppy seconds for me, from a girl in a movie theater when I was 17. The movie? Red Tails. My ex-girlfriend was a grade level above me, and she was as cheerleader on the school cheer team. I was a wrestler and I knew when my coach would be out of our wrestling room. On some random Tuesday or something we were just sexually texting in class, and the only thing I could think of was ducking her brains out on game day, the day she would wear her uniform to school. We decided to both use the hall pass during third period and go into the vacant wrestling room. The only light on was the emergency light that shined directly on the center of the mat. He didn't know if we would actually do it, but I have a weakness for cheerleaders, especially in uniform. We ducked for a whole 3 minutes until I bust a nut out of either excitement due to the fact that I practice in this room and wear at school like what the duck, or that I was scared of getting caught, so I had to speed things up. We walked out of the room together stupidly. As soon as I grabbed the door, I heard keys jingling. Yeah, my coach caught me with my girlfriend. He didn't have proof that we did anything, but the fact that our school logo was now on the back of her uniform gave that away. He didn't take this lightly and I had my own personal hell week until the following Tuesday. TLDR, ducked a cheerleader during school, totally. Worth I was 69ing with a girl in the park in my young teenage years. Her butthole had beads of sweat running over it and near my little exploring nose. Some people passed by. I think kids. Then I finished and she took Coca-Cola from her bag saying, "It helps the taste get out my mouth." Thanks, Cola. I've got a lot of crazy sex and dumb-ish to do in the next 3 months before I turn 20 to catch up with you animals. I was 16 and fooling around with a girl in the back of my car after school. I wasn't expecting to have a sex with her, it just kinda got to that point. I didn't have any condoms, but we didn't want to raw dog it, so I grabbed the first aid kit and pulled out a latex glove. He spit on it and said, "Good enough." Used a banana skin to fap. It was amazing. Was in the process of ducking my girlfriend at my friend's house, while he was still asleep at my house. As she's going down on me, his dad comes home for lunch and walks into his son's room because it's a pretty small house and he hears something. I get up, pull up my pants and stick my naked girlfriend behind the door. He asks what I'm doing there. I tell him I forgot the AV cables for my GameCube at his house, true, and came back to get them before his son, still at my house, woke up. I show him the cable and he doesn't question it at all. Just says okay and grabs his lunch and goes back to work. All the while my 15-year-old girlfriend is a foot from him, naked and separated only by the door, looking right at me and praying we don't get caught. Got a BJ from a girl in the middle of a camping ground. Finished literally seconds before we saw someone with a flashlight coming our way. Someone offered to pay me so he can eat me out and I agreed. Thus starting my daddy-daughter fetish. I jizzed my pants in the middle of class just to see if I could. My ex-boyfriend's 17th birthday, his parents left the house for a bit and specified they would be back in an hour. They never left us alone. They specifically left so that we could have a sex, as my ex said. His ducking birthday present was sex, we did, all over the house. But it wasn't when he lost his virginity, since we had been having sex for a while before that. Broad daylight in his car pulled on the side of the road, fields, so many fields on the way home. On the golf course at night after prom. In the back of my mum's truck for New Year's while everyone was popping fireworks. Every time my mum would leave for a second. In a closet while playing hide and seek with his nephews. On his mum's massage table in her office. We were like rabbits, but seriously he had some great parents to do that. Always had condoms accessible in the house, no sex shaming, very educational, very open. Great parents. If you enjoyed today's video, drop a like and subscribe for a part 2 and trust me, it only gets better from here.